So in this video, I'm going to cover how to go through a linear programming question using Google Sheets. So there's going to be 6 different steps. The first thing that you want to do is really kind of scan to the end of the question because that's what you're going to be answering. We want to know if the total amount of storage is this and they have this kind of money, how many acres of each crop should be planted to maximize profit, and then what will the profit be. So there's 2 questions to answer. How many acres of each crop, and then what will the profit be? So I'm going to scan through the question to figure out what are the crops they're talking about. We have corn and soybeans. So over in a Google Sheet here, I'm going to label this variables. And we have corn, or C is the number of acres of corn planted. And S is the number of acres of soybeans planted. If you want to bold this, you can click on the cell and just click bold. And if you want to make this column bigger, just bring the mouse between A and B and then just drag this over. The second step is trying to figure out your objective. What are you trying to do in this question? Well, you're trying to maximize the profit. So our objective function, which we're going to call it, is going to deal with profit. And I just need to scan through. I see a bunch of things with dollar signs. I'm trying to figure out what specifically am I maximizing, or which of these deal with profit. So expenses, expenses, profit, profit. So the corn is profiting 60 and the soybeans 90. So I'm going to have what's called the objective function. That's just what is the objective? What are we trying to do here? I'm going to use P for profit, and it's 60 for the corn, so 60C plus 90S. Next, we're going to move on to something called constraints. That's limitations that you have on, in this case, different things. Like we don't have an unlimited budget. We don't have an unlimited size farm. We don't have unlimited storage. So as we scan through this, we need to think about what are their limits on. Well, she has a 320 acre farm and she can only plant crops on those acres. So one of these is going to be C plus S, the number of acres of corn plus the number of acres of soy. If you hit Control U and then the less than sign, and then hit Control U again, it'll give you like a less than or equal to. Less than or equal to 320. And this is the limit for the acres. Let me zoom this in a little bit. We also have a limit on the expenses. The corn is $50, the soybean is $100 per acre, and she only has $20,000 on hand. So, 50 and 100? Yeah. So it's $50 per acre of corn plus $100 per acre of soybean. Again, Control U, the less than or equal to $20,000. And these are expenses. They're less than or equal to, you can't spend more than you have. The last thing is talking about storage. So the corn is 100 bushels, the soybeans 40, and she has 19,200 available for her space. So we have 140 and 19,200. 100 times the corn plus 40 times the soy, less than or equal to 19,200. And that deals with storage. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to graph these inequalities. What we're going to do is we're going to use Desmos to do that. So if you just Google Desmos graphing calculator, it'll just bring you over here. And I'm going to type these in. I have to use X and Y without spaces. So this first one is just going to be X plus Y. You can click on this keyboard here to get less than or equal to 320. Hit enter. The next one, 50, 120,000, 50x plus 100y is less than or equal to. You could type less than and then equal to. It'll do that as a shortcut. And then the last one, 140 and 19.2. 100x plus 40y is less than or equal to 19,200. Okay, So we're going to start zooming out so we can see these. They're all less than or equal to. So I have this green line. Everything less than that shows in green. Everything less than the blue line shows in blue. Everything less than the red line shows in red. All in all, I'm looking for the shaded region. So that's this part here. We're not going to go into any negatives in this unit, so we're just going to be focusing on the first quadrant. So what we're going to call the feasible region, anything that could be an answer, is in this region here, this kind of darker green. It's a quadrilateral. It has 4 sides. So what we need to do is we need to figure out the coordinates of this point, this point, this point, and obviously this is 0, 0. So if I click on this line here, make sure you don't move your window. Make sure everything's locked in place, because otherwise you're going to get these points to disappear. So if you click on that, it'll turn it from gray to black and it'll lock it in place. Then if you move your window, it's going to get rid of that. So that's what I was trying to show you. So click on that, 0, 200. Click on this point. We need this vertice down here. Click on this point. And 0, 0, we're not going to test that. That would result in a profit of 0. So we have our 3 points here. We're going to do a screenshot on your Chromebook. I'm just going to snip it here. Just make sure that when you do this, you can see your entire feasible region and the test points. Then you're going to come back over to your Google Sheet. You're going to paste that. Control V will paste, Control C will copy. And I'm just going to resize this a little bit so I can see that clearly. Okay, so we need to test these 3 points and see which one maximizes the profit. So we're going to make a little table here. Number of acres corn, number of acres soybeans, and profit. If you want, you can bold these. And then if you hold the mouse on C, D, and E, if you want, you can change this alignment to center. You don't need to. So corn is the X coordinate, soy is the Y, so we're going to go 0, 200, 140, 130, and 192, 0. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the objective function to figure out what the profit is. And to do that, we're going to create a formula in Google Sheets. To do that, we use the equal sign. What we want to do is we'll multiply the acres of corn by 60, so we're going to do 60. There's no time symbol on the keyboard, so we have to use the asterisk. So it's Shift 8, 60 times this cell here. So you're just going to click on that cell. Plus, we have to do 90 times the soybean acres. So 90, again, Shift 8 for the asterisk for multiplication. And then click on that cell that has the acres of soybean. Hit enter. You'll probably come up with an option that suggests autofill. Basically, it's going to take the formula, assuming you plugged it in right, and fill it for the next 2. If that looks good, assuming you typed it in correct, hit the green arrow, and that'll take care of that. If you don't get that option, your other way to do this is to bring the mouse over to this blue square, so you get a little plus sign, click on the mouse, hold it, drag it down, and it will take care of that. Now, once you're here, you're going to go ahead and click on this dollar icon, and it will convert it to currency. We're trying to maximize the profit. So I can see right now the max profit is here, and it occurred with this many acres of corn and this many acres of soybeans. So the last step is just answer the question. Going back to the original, how many acres should she plant and what will her profit be? So she should plant 140 acres of corn and 130 acres of soybeans to maximize her profit at that $19,200. Oops, no, that's right, wrong. $20,100. And that's it. Those are the 6 steps that I'm looking for. Your test will be made up of exactly this. So you're going to have your variables, your objective function. It's either going to be something you're trying to maximize or minimize. Your constraints, there will be at least 2, all the way up to like 5. Your table, that comes from your Desmos graph that you copy and paste over, and then a conclusion. I do want to talk about rounding for a minute. This point, if it was 200.8, yes, mathematically that rounds to 201, but if you round it to 201, that wouldn't be in the feasible region, so you'd have to round that down to 200. But because we're talking about acres, we could have 200.8. So sometimes you're going to have to round, sometimes you're not going to have to round. 200.8 would be okay. Here, if this was 140.1, we're going to want to round that down because we need to be in this dark green region. If we rounded that up to 141, we're going to be above that. Same idea if, say, you had 130.9. If you go to 131, you're going to be outside that dark green region, so you'd round to 130. It just depends on the question. The other difference you're going to see is this is a max function. If it was a min, all your shading would be in the top right. Let me show you here what that would look like if I change these inequalities in Desmos. And I change my window a little bit. So if you're trying to minimize something, now the dark green region is this whole region up here. So for the feasible region, I'd have this point here, this point here. If I click on this other line, this point here and this point here. These 4 points bound this limitless region. It just keeps on going. And if we have to be greater than or equal to, I got to be in this kind of bluish green area. And if we're shading up here, now when you think about rounding, this has got to round to 107 to be in that region. And this has got to round to 214. Because if you round to 213, you're going to be below that feasible region. So those are the two different types of questions you're going to see. You're going to see min and max questions. If this was a max question, a min question, the only thing that would change here, your inequalities are going to be greater than or equal to. And then whatever is in this column, usually cost or something, you're going to look for the minimum cost and answer accordingly in your conclusion. So those are the 6 steps for linear programming. Hopefully that answers your questions and you found this helpful.